Eddie Van Halen was the greatest guitarist alive. He knew it. Everyone knew it. So when a quiet little man in purple picked up a guitar in the corner of the shop and started tuning it, Eddie smirked. "You sure about that, buddy?" He'd never regret a sentence more. Norman's Rare Guitars, Tarzana, Los Angeles. Thursday afternoon, October 2011, 3:22 p.m. The Guitar Shop in L.A., floor-to-ceiling vintage instruments, pre-CBS Fenders, 1950s Gibsons. Eddie Van Halen, 56, walked in with his son Wolfgang, 20. Full rock star mode, faded tour t-shirt, ripped jeans, bourbon-roughened voice. He walked like he owned every room, because musically he did. Norman greeted him. "Eddie? The usual? Bring me everything in 1958 Gibson. I'm feeling dangerous." Wolfgang rolled his eyes. "Dad, you have 200 guitars at home." 201 never hurt anyone. In the far corner, barely visible behind vintage acoustics, a small, quiet man examined a 1966 Fender Stratocaster, turning it slowly, running his thumb along the neck, studying it like a doctor examining a patient. Simple black turtleneck, dark slim trousers, purple suede loafers, natural afro, no sunglasses. He looked like a music teacher. Eddie barely noticed him. Norman brought out 2 vintage Gibsons. Eddie started playing. Even warming up, the sound was otherworldly. His fingers defied physics. The quiet man glanced over briefly, went back to examining the Stratocaster. Eddie noticed him. Specifically, he noticed the man fingering chord shapes without playing, eyes closed, listening to the guitar without making a sound. Eddie leaned to Wolfgang. "What's he doing?" "Feeling the resonance, hearing how it vibrates acoustically." Eddie scoffed. "That's the most pretentious thing I've ever seen. Just play the damn thing." He called over. "Hey, buddy, you gonna buy it or marry it?" The man opened his eyes, looked at Eddie calmly, didn't respond. "You've been holding that guitar 20 minutes without playing a note. Either you can't play or you're scared. Which is it?" Wolfgang winced. "Dad." The man's voice was quiet. "I'm checking if it's authentic." "Norman's stuff is always authentic. What are you, some kind of expert?" "Something like that." "Right." Eddie turned back to his Gibson. "Let me know if you need someone to show you how to actually play it." The man nodded pleasantly. "I know who he is." 10 minutes passed. Eddie was deep in his own world, playing complex runs on the Gibson. The bass player in the back had stopped entirely, just watching. Then a single note rang out from the corner. Clean, pure, devastating. Eddie stopped. The note hung in the air like smoke, then another and another. The quiet man had finally started playing. What came out of that corner was not a rock riff, not blues, not funk, something that contained all of those things and transcended every single one. The man played a melody that started gentle, almost classical, then built into a funk groove, then exploded into a guitar solo that made the walls vibrate. His technique was unlike anything Eddie had heard. Left-hand chording and playing melody simultaneously. Right-hand hybrid picking, fingers and pick combined. Dynamics shifting from whisper quiet to screaming in 3 seconds. Tone pulling frequencies from that Stratocaster that Eddie didn't know existed. Eddie's Gibson was still in his hands. He had forgotten to breathe. Wolfgang, mouth open. "Dad, Dad, who is that?" Eddie shook his head slowly. He didn't know, but he knew what he was hearing. Someone on his level, maybe above it. The solo built to a climax, then stopped, completely. One final note bent perfectly, fading into silence. The shop was dead quiet. Norman, who had heard every great guitarist alive play in his store, leaned against the counter with tears in his eyes. Eddie stood up slowly, set the Gibson down, walked toward the corner. The man was inspecting the Stratocaster's tuning pegs again, calm, as if nothing had happened. Eddie, "Okay, who are you?" The man looked up, a small smile. "You first." Eddie blinked, then laughed despite himself. "Eddie Van Halen. I know." "And you are?" The man set the Stratocaster back on its stand, extended his hand. "Prince." Silence. Eddie stared at the hand, then the face, then the purple suede loafers. Wolfgang dropped his phone. It clattered on the hardwood floor. Eddie, barely audible. "Prince Rogers Nelson." "That's the one." Eddie Van Halen, the man who invented modern rock guitar, who hadn't been genuinely shocked by another musician in 30 years, sat back down on the amp. I told you that you couldn't. You told me to let you know if I needed someone to show me how to play." A pause. "I'm fine." Eddie stared at him for a long moment. Then he started laughing. Really laughing. Hands on his knees, shoulders shaking. "Oh, man!" He wiped his eyes. "Oh, that's Norman! Norman! Did you know?" Norman, grinning. "He comes in sometimes. I don't advertise it. You couldn't have warned me before I made a complete idiot of myself? And miss that? Absolutely not." Eddie pulled his stool to Prince's corner. Voice different now. Bravado gone. That left-hand melody while soloing with the right. How long to develop that? Prince, surprised by the sincerity. 20 years. I've been playing 35 and I can't do it clean. You do other things I can't. Like what? The two-handed tapping. I can approximate it, but it doesn't sound like you. Eddie went quiet. You actually studied my playing? Of course. You changed what the guitar could do. I'd be a fool not to. Wolfgang, watching from across the shop, realized what he was seeing. Two legends, no ego, no performance, just two people who loved the same instrument, talking honestly. He silently recorded audio only. He knew better than to point a camera. Eddie picked up the Gibson. Prince picked up the Stratocaster. Play me that opening melody again. Prince played it. Eddie tried. Close, not quite. Again. Slower this time. Eddie tried. Closer. You're tensing your ring finger on the transition. How do you? I can hear it. Tiny hesitation between the third and fourth note. Eddie adjusted. Played it again. Perfect. He stared at his own hand. You heard that? In real time? I hear everything. They played together for 47 minutes. No audience, no cameras, no recording rolling, just two men and two guitars in the corner while Norman pretended to do paperwork, and Wolfgang sat on the floor, back against the wall, listening to something he knew he'd never hear again. A blues progression that evolved into something neither had played before. A funk groove Eddie tried to rock out, Prince gently pulling it back. Eddie laughed and followed. At one point they played the exact same note at the exact same moment, unprompted. They looked at each other. Both smiled. No words needed. 5:47 p.m. Norman turned off lights. Prince stood, set the Stratocaster back with the same care he'd given it 2 hours ago. Eddie. You buying it? No, it belongs here. Not everyone who picks it up should own it. Eddie nodded. Yeah, that's right. Prince headed for the door. Hey. Prince stopped. I'm sorry for earlier. The you can't play thing. Prince turned, calm, unreadable, but his eyes were warm. You didn't know. Still. Eddie, in 40 years of playing, has anyone genuinely surprised you? Made you hear something you'd never heard? Eddie thought honestly. A few times, maybe 4 in my whole life. Today makes 4 for me, too. One final look. Then he walked out. The bell above the door chimed. Gone. Eddie stood in the empty store. Wolfgang appeared at his shoulder. "Dad, you okay?" Eddie looked at the Stratocaster, still perfectly in tune, still warm from Prince's hands. "I told Prince he couldn't play guitar." "Yeah, in a guitar shop." "Yep." "In front of Norman." "Uh-huh." Long pause. "I'm an idiot." Wolfgang put his arm around his father. "Little bit, yeah." Eddie walked back to the corner, looked at the Stratocaster, didn't touch it. Norman appeared. "Want me to put it away?" "No, leave it out tonight." Norman said nothing. He'd seen strange things in this shop. This was different. This was reverence. Eddie sat back on the amp stool. "You know what I don't understand? He could have told me who he was. When I made fun of him, shut me up immediately." Norman poured water. "That's not how Prince operates. He doesn't argue, doesn't explain, never defends himself." He set his glass down. "He plays, every time." Eddie was quiet. "In 40 years of playing, I've met maybe 4 people who made me feel like I had more to learn." "He said the same thing to you." "Yeah, he did." Wolfgang sat across from his father. "What did that feel like? Someone teaching you something?" Eddie thought carefully. "Like finding out there's a room in your house you didn't know existed, and inside it, everything you thought you knew looks different." They sat in the quiet shop, 2 guitars on their stands, 1 Gibson, 1 Stratocaster. The last, October light through the window. Eddie looked at the door Prince had walked through. "I walked in here today thinking I was the best guitarist in the world." Pause. "I still might be. But today I learned that best is a really small word for what music actually is." 1 year later, 2012, Wolfgang Van Halen was recording his solo album, trying to find his own voice, separate from his father's giant shadow. He thought about that afternoon in Norman's, about Prince's left-hand technique, about what it meant to have a voice so distinct that even Eddie Van Halen stopped and listened. He picked up the phone, called Prince's team, expected to be ignored. Prince called back personally. "Your dad's kid, of course. Come to Paisley Park." Wolfgang flew to Minnesota alone, didn't tell his father where he was going. He arrived at Paisley Park on a Tuesday morning, Studio A. Prince was already there, playing piano. Didn't stop when Wolfgang walked in. Kept playing for 3 minutes. Then stopped, turned around. "You hungry?" They ate breakfast together. Prince made eggs. Wolfgang couldn't quite believe any of it was real. "My dad talks about that day in Norman's," Wolfgang said, "every time someone asks him about his greatest musical memory." Prince sipped his tea. "He says he's never felt that combination before, humbled and inspired at the same time." "Good combination." "He wanted me to tell you something." Wolfgang hesitated. "He said to say thank you, for not making him feel stupid." Prince set his cup down. "He wasn't stupid, he just didn't know. There's a difference." They spent 3 days at Paisley Park. Prince taught Wolfgang the left-hand melody technique, the one that had stopped Eddie cold in that guitar shop. Wolfgang taught Prince two-handed tapping. Eddie's signature move, passed to his son, now passed further. They recorded everything. 4 tracks. Completely improvised, never discussed beforehand. On the second night, around 2 a.m., they recorded something neither of them could describe afterward. Wolfgang called it the piece. When asked what it sounded like, he always struggled. Like a conversation, like 2 different languages that were actually the same language. Prince said nothing publicly. He never discussed sessions. But Wolfgang kept the recordings, all 4 tracks. On a hard drive he carried with him everywhere. On the final day, Prince walked Wolfgang to his car. "You coming back sometime?" Wolfgang asked. "If you need me." "What if I just want to?" Prince smiled. "Same answer." Wolfgang drove to the airport, flew home. He never released those recordings, not when his album came out, not when it was successful, not when journalists begged, not even after Prince died in 2016, not even after Eddie died in 2020. April 2016, Paisley Park. Wolfgang was on tour when the news broke. He sat on his tour bus for 4 hours without speaking. Then he called his father. Neither of them said much, just stayed on the line. October 2020, Cedars-Sinai Hospital, Los Angeles. Eddie Van Halen died of cancer. Wolfgang held his hand at the end. He thought about Norman's rare guitars, about the afternoon Prince had walked through the door, about the 47 minutes that no one had recorded. He thought about what his father had said afterward. "Best is a really small word for what music actually is." He thought about the hard drive, the 4 tracks, the peace. He thought about Prince saying, "The music you make for yourself is the most important music you'll ever make." He kept them in the vault. 2021, Wolfgang was interviewed for a music documentary. The interviewer asked about his greatest musical memory. Wolfgang smiled, took a long pause. "There's a recording. 3 days at Paisley Park, 2012. Just me and Prince, trading everything we knew." "Can we hear it?" "No." "Why not?" Wolfgang looked at the camera. "Because Prince taught me that the moment music becomes content, it becomes something else. Those tracks are mine, and his, and my dad's, in a way, because without that afternoon in Norman's, none of it would have happened." "What was on them?" "Everything." He paused. "And nothing you could describe." "Do you regret not releasing them?" "Not for a second." "What did Prince teach you? In those 3 days?" Wolfgang was quiet for a moment. "My dad told Prince he couldn't play guitar. Prince responded by playing the most beautiful thing my father ever heard. Then Prince apologized for nothing. He just played." He looked down at his hands. "That's the lesson. Don't argue, don't explain, don't defend. Just play." Another pause. "And when someone teaches you something real, protect it. Don't turn it into a product. Let it live where it belongs, in the music, in the memory, in the room where it happened." The interview ended. Wolfgang drove home. In his bag, the hard drive. 4 tracks, 47 stolen minutes, 3 days at Paisley Park, 2 legends who taught each other, one son who witnessed it all. The music lived where Prince said it should, in itself, not for content, not for streams, not for viral moments, just music, the way it was always meant to be.